we've covered poll after poll after poll. We've seen the new ones come in again and again and again, and it has constantly been showing that the Tories are 20 points behind Labour consistently, and they are not narrowing. If anything, they always seem to lose like 1 or 2 points, and then they maybe like regain like 1 or 2 points, but they've never really been able to like properly close the gap, which is what honestly I think Rishi Sunak had been hoping, because I think if the polls had been a lot narrower, if the polls had been like maybe like 10 or maybe even less than that, like a couple of points between them and Labour, I think we would have had a general election by now. I really think they would. And I think it's because they've been watching the polls, they know themselves, and I think you'll see certainly this year maybe an attempt to push through a lot of really bad Tory ideas, because they know that they're going to be out of power for some time. So, hey, this is our last chance to pass some wacky things. So maybe let's try and go for that, which also will damage their chances at a general election as well. Notably, of course, the right to strike and, minimum service levels. This is one of the things where people are like, oh, well, why aren't Labour stopping them? Labour are quite happy to go, look, we'll let them pass it, and then at the general election, we'll let them take all the flack for it, and then we get in, we can just undo it very easily and quickly. We can just unvote it very, very simply. So they are more than happy to let the Tories, I think, do some of this stuff because they know the flack that they are going to end up taking for it. We've just seen the defeat against Rishi Sunak over the repayment for the bad blood scandal, as it's known. But because we've said that they're in a panic, and we've talked about the panic that they are in before, there has to be a question asked: can anyone save the Tories at this point, or are they just so unsavable that there is absolutely nothing that can be done? You may remember when Rishi Sunak came in not too long ago, their big sort of campaign firm that they had to campaign for them said, look, you have this really narrow path to victory, and even then we can't guarantee it. And even now, I think that narrow path has long since sailed into the distance. I think the first thing Rishi Sunak should have done was just come in and just call a general election and just roll the dice and see what should have happened. But of course, woulda, coulda, shoulda to Rishi Sunak. But there is one man who it seems all the Tories are now placing their hopes in. That is, of course, Richard Holden. He is the new party chairman. And the Tories are asking themselves, is this the man who can maybe save us in some way, shape, or form enough, maybe that we don't win, but we still maintain at least a somewhat sizable majority to be a somewhat, decent opposition? Like I say, a lot of the Tories are hoping that they lose, but lose goodly, if that makes any sense. But anyway, yes, we're going to go get onto this into Richard Holden, because, of course, this is the guy, when it comes to running the next general election, he's going to be pretty much in charge of running the campaign. So knowing who this guy is, what maybe his plans are, and of course what other Tories are saying about him, because there's a bit of a controversy at the moment around some of it, certainly. But interesting, obviously, person to know, and of course someone you should know about, especially coming up to the next general election. So let's get on into this. But before we do that, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And of course, as always, there is the YouTube thank you button, and of course, the Pony Club down below as well. So let's go over to the Eye and their coverage of this. So, can the attack dog, Richard Holden, save the Tories? Tory MPs are preparing to save their political lives at the next general election, have described their new party chair as an attack dog, and suggested that he will run a no-holds-barred campaign. So the Tories are essentially saying we've got this guy in. He is the attack dog, and we are just going to go all in. No, nothing is off limits. I think, to be honest, given that they've said that, this could be a very, very dirty campaign, a very dirty campaign. And the problem then becomes, in a lot of areas, how do you sort of fight back against that and not fall into the traps that ultimately the Tories are going to lay for you for those attacks? So, Richard Holden's new position as Conservative Party chairman means that the 38-year-old will have a key role in his colleagues' battle to retain their seats and prevent Labour from winning a landslide victory. But he is a controversial figure, and while some optimistic Tory MPs believe he can improve the party's terrible performance in the polls, others have serious misgivings about the MP for North West Durham's suitability for the job. One senior Tory backbencher said that Mr. Holden's appointment was a surprise to many, but it was clear that he was given the job as a reward for his closeness to Sunak and his willingness to attack Labour in a way that the critics of his predecessor, Greg Hands, argued he shrinked from. So we are going to be seeing, quite possibly, attacks against Labour in ways that we have not seen before. So we've got to obviously prepare for these new attacks and think about how we're going to combat them. Make sure that, when stuff is said, what are we going to say for them? Maybe they planned for that retort. Is this just an attack to draw out an argument? We've got to really be careful about obviously what is going to come. And if this guy is going to go all out attack, and basically from going by past things that he's done, just throw as much mud as the wall as you can and just don't care about anything else that's coming back at you. Just keep on attacking and just find something till something sticks, could be what is coming our way. So it continues from the senior backbencher who said his appointment at the reshuffle was an enormous surprise. I don't think anyone had Richard Holden as party chair on their bingo sheets, but he is an attack dog, which is what you want in a party chair. He is certainly someone who will be willing to stoop to any level. He is someone who says something without necessarily checking it before he says it, and that is going to get them into a lot of trouble. I think that could end up backfiring on them. Yes, you want someone who is going to be an attack dog in this type of, position as party chair, but someone who, shouts before they think about what they've said, especially in a political setting, especially when Labour can just turn around and just say, well, that's an absolute outright lie. Why are you doing this? That could have even worse consequences on a party that, because of Boris Johnson, because of all the past couple of years, has a very, very bad reputation for doing this, could only hurt them more at a general election. So, in fact, eyebrows were raised just hours after Mr. Holden had assumed his new role, with a Conservative fundraising email that was pushed out without warning that various Labour frontbenchers had tried to get Jeremy Corbyn elected to Prime Minister, including Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting. This was despite Mr. Streeting being one of Mr. Corbyn's biggest critics from the backbenchers. Yeah, this is what they tried before. Oh, you don't understand. If Labour win, they'll bring back Corbyn. Woo! Anyway, sources close to Mr. Streeting have rejected this suggestion, saying that any such backing would be news to Corbyn. The fact that Keir Starmer kicked Corbyn out of the party, while Sunak can't even apologise for the damage that Liz Truss means, this just won't work, the source said. But even before his promotion, Mr. Holden had been keen to keep drawing links between Keir Starmer and Corbyn, in a signal that this will be a key attack line during the election campaign. When Mr. Corbyn refused to condemn Hamas after the 7th of October atrocities, Mr. Holden tweeted saying, I am astounded that Keir Starmer pandered to him, sat in his shadow cabinet and campaigned for him to be our prime minister, called him his friend and defended him even after Corbyn left office, he tweeted. Mr. Holden obviously provided his usefulness to both Boris Johnson and Sunak in taking the fight to Labour during the height of the Partygate row. The MP had been handed claims that Keir Starmer had been pictured drinking a beer at the Labour Party gathering at the time where there were COVID restrictions, which quickly became branded as the Beergate scandal. And of course, as we know, nothing came of that. Like, nothing came of that. And there are even questions still asked to this day. How on earth did this guy, this sort of young Tory activist, get this photo, and especially at the angle that they did? We covered this back when this was just starting, and it seems really suspicious that he managed to take this photo, apparently from a house. When you look at, even on Google Maps, that particular window isn't facing those particular houses. And lots of questions should be asked about that still. And of course, why then was this handed, of course, to sort of, Greg hands? Like I say, nothing really came from it. It didn't really stick. And ultimately, if anything, it made Johnson look even worse, because Keir Starmer was like, well, tell you what, if I get a fine, I'll resign. And of course, he didn't get a fine, so he didn't have to resign. But Johnson and Sunak did. They didn't resign. So it makes them look even worse. But it continues. So, despite his best efforts, Mr. Holden was unable to extract a fine for the Labour leader from the local police. But his tenacity in trying to push the story onto the front pages of most newspapers caught attention. He was handed his first ministerial job when Mr. Sunak entered number 10 and has remained a close ally to Sunak's team, leading to his securing the cabinet role as party chair. So one of the things that we can see why he got this role now, he's a close ally to Sunak. And to be honest, Sunak needs all the allies he can get. He needs all the allies he can get. And if this guy is going to be, loyal to Sunak, well, to be honest, it's not like Sunak has many people to pick from who are going to be loyal to him and maybe not stab him in the back. But does strike me, Richard Holden does strike me as a bit of an opportunist. And I will tell you this now, I think if he saw an opportunity for an advancement, I think he would gladly throw Sunak under the bus. I think he would gladly do that. And I will tell you this now, if the Tories do lose the next general election, he's going to throw him under the bus. He's going to be there were many people throw him under the bus. Oh, wasn't me. It was, Rishi Sunak. He wasn't doing any of the type of things I was asking him to do in any of this things. So that's probably what's going to happen in this regard. So this is where some of the controversy comes in as well. But some of the Tories have questioned the sense of giving such a prominent job to an MP without a seat for the next election. His current constituency is being abolished, and it has prompted backbenchers to suggest that he will try and parachute himself into a safe constituency before the country goes to polls. And of course, this whole chicken run scenario, as it's been called, Tories trying to run and sort of guarantee them safe seats. Bit of a big controversy in the Tories. We've talked about this before. Not a lot of people, and especially Tory MPs, are happy, and it's going to cause a lot of upset faces, should we say, in the party if he gets a safe seat, while another Tory, who is also losing their constituency, doesn't get a safe seat, who might be seen as a bit more of an asset, shall we say, over this. But like I say, we'll have to see how this goes. But ultimately, this isn't being, should we say, going down well in the Tories. So the party chair has obviously sway over which names can be listed for each seat, and potentially giving Mr. Holden a trump card over any rivals. So imagine that. You've technically lost your seat because of the boundary changes. But now you're in a position where you could basically have your pick of the seats. And any people who don't like you, well, sorry for you, my friend. No seat for you. And of course, this is what another MP said. His role means that he can now put himself into a position to get any seat he wants. But he will then have to spend time going through the process to get the seat rather than planning for the next election, one MP said. Others have insisted that such an argument would not be acceptable and suggested that a deal may have been struck with Sunak that would see him handed a peerage after the election. And this is what he's also doing the rounds. The fact that he may have done this deal with Sunak, saying, I won't take a seat, but give me a peerage. And this is yet another reason why we need to reform the House of Lords. So, this is what a backbencher had to say about this. I think Mr. Holden has gone into survival mode, where that's where his thinking is right now. How can I play a role in going forward after the next election? Has he got some kind of deal to be done where he goes to the Lords? He has been on the shortlist for some of the seats, but not been selected as chairman. It's going to be very difficult for him to get inserted into another seat. But the MP did add that there were far more pressing matters for Mr. Holden to contend with first, like trying to secure a coherent strategy for the Prime Minister before going to the election. He said all the party chairmen before him haven't been able to get Rishi Sunak what he wants from the party to start gearing up for, they said. He doesn't want them to gear up for an election where he tries to defend every red wall seat and try and fight a strategy where he thinks he can hold on to both the blue and the red wall. Or does he go, right, we've got to stem the losses. Let's just try and hold what we can and try and carry out hopefully for a 2015 strategy. I think from the reshuffle, you can see that he is now starting to look at trying to probably fight a 2015 strategy. But the party just doesn't know. The MP was optimistic, saying that Mr. Holden could achieve what his predecessors maybe had failed to do, saying that he's a creature of the CCHQ. He knows how to gear them up, he knows how it works, and it's likely to be a rebel MPs on the right. And I think he will do quite well. So, what will happen going forward? This is a guy who, quite rightly, as he's pointing out there, needs a strategy. He needs to get the Tory MPs into a strategy to figure out this is how we're going to fight the next general election. And I will tell you now, doing so could upset a lot of different MPs because there are two strategies offered there. Do you defend both the red wall and the blue wall at the same time, which, by the way, going to prove almost impossible to do? We've talked about this, I don't know how many times. The fact that Boris Johnson himself had to do a balancing act, and that as soon as Boris Johnson was gone, this balancing act was not going to be able to be performed by anybody else in the Tory party. Like, no one had the type of charisma, the opportunities that Boris Johnson had to be able to perform that balancing act. And Boris Johnson eventually, well, he could not keep the plate spinning. Just look at all the polling intentions in these red wall seats. They don't look good. So the next question then becomes, do you go, well, we abandon the red wall and then we go to a 2015 strategy? Now, remember what the 2015 strategy was. The Tories were just coming out of a coalition government. They overwhelmingly didn't really have that good a reputation, but their hope was, let's hold the seats we know we can win. And if we do manage to take any seats, we'll see it as a victory. But if we do, at least we will retain a majority for any future potential hung parliaments. Now, ultimately, they would go on to win that particular general election. So, could we see a very similar strategy tried of like loss mitigation? I'll tell you now, it's not going to play well with those red wall Tories because they will scream blue murder. They will scream blue murder from the top of their lungs if that starts to happen. Um, and it's that could affect them even more. That could affect them even more. Not only that, you also have in the polls where you're looking at Reform UK. And this obviously, I need to do a video about this itself, but Reform UK does seem to be becoming actually quite a threat to the Tories, possibly at the next general election. So, before we do probably go on to that another time, but we'll see what happens. We'll see what voting intention plays out, whether they will maintain, of course, this voting intention. Of course, you know, we never know what will come around the corner, how these voting intentions will change, etc., etc. Until now and then, Richard Holden has to come up with a coherent strategy. He has to get the Tories on board. Will he be able to get all the Tory party on board? I don't think so. If he goes for that loss mitigation strategy, well, you've got problems because what then do you do to the Tories who are going to lose their seats? What do you say to them? It's yeah, it really does not look good, to say the least for them, and that is, to be honest, I think quite good. I've said it before. I think most of the people who I know who you know on sort of the Labour social etc. will agree with me. We just need to get rid of the Tories. We need a new party in who's actually going to sort of sort stuff out and do it properly, not these crazy double down maneuvers that we've seen even recently. The Rwanda plan, another example. Remember, that was just a whole double down strategy till we've got to the Rwanda plan, and now that's failed. Well, we're going to double down on it even more and not really look at, the asylum system itself. Oh no, we can't look at that. No, let's just double down on these crazy right wing ideas. So, of course, as always, thank you very much for watching, and of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.